Okay, welcome everybody to the July 11th meeting of the Land and Buildings Committee. We have a quorum present. Councilor Lippman is here, myself, Councilor Hamel. Councilor Baldick will be here shortly. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to go over the lease arrangements with the Winnipesaukee Flagship Corporation, which expires on March 31st, 2016, which is less than a year. 17, I'm sorry, what did I say?
16.
I said 16, I'm sorry, 17. Looking right at it, too. So that gives us a little less than a year to approve it, but I don't think there's going to be any problem. So the lease originally that we're in now was started on the first day of April of 1987. And there is an option now for another 20 years upon agreement of both parties. The first lease was a 30-year lease, which started in 87. So, and the rent on the property right now is $1 per year. And there's, in the lease, there's different paragraphs for what the leasee is responsible for and the leaseor. And probably what I'd like to do is maybe if Jim could come up as one of the principals in the Flagship Corporation. Maybe you could just state a little bit about the Mount Washington and what's transpired over those 30 years and, you know, what you're doing there, and might help a lot. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Councilor Hamel.
If maybe just state your name for the record.
Okay, Jim Morash. I'm captain and general manager and a part owner of the Mount Washington. And last time I was here, I tried to speak briefly, but I think Scott probably put it in more eloquent terms than I did that evening, probably a little nervous. But I'd like to start off by saying that I hope we all agree that the Mount is a vital cog in the economic wheel at De Weers, and we've been around a long time. Certainly we've been around longer than we all have, and with our infrastructure over the last 30 years and the investment by the ownership, I expect these boats to be around long after I'm gone. We have put new engines in the vessels in the last 30 years. We've spent, we started off in 87 building the new building. I don't know if you folks remember, but back then that building was condemned. I was around, I was a young kid, but I was around to remember that. So we built the building, and we continue to maintain that building. That was a major investment on our part. From then on, it was, the investment in the piers, or, whether we're annually promoting the Weirs area with our marketing dollars. I think that we've spent a fair amount of money, probably over $1 million in our investment in the Weirs and the property and in the business. We draw probably an annual number of around 60,000 tourists to the Weirs every year. And as I said, we've made major investments in the boats to be sure that they're here for a long time, because that's our commitment to the Weirs. However, as you all know, when you're in business and you want to look out, we would love nothing better than to be a leader, as we've tried to be at the Weirs, in addition to being a good neighbor, to be a leader in the development of Weirs Beach. But 20 years out on a lease is not very comforting. I think that's why we asked Scott to put this meeting together, so we can get an additional 20 years. So as an ownership, we can take a look at that when investments arise at the Weirs. Certainly the Weirs is, I think, at a point in time that it would not surprise me that development down the line in Weirs Beach is probably going to increase. That area, it's changed in 30 years, and I'm sure it's going to change in the next 20, and we want to be part of it. So the best way we can be part of it is to have the comfort of the extended lease.
Jim,
Yes.
in terms of so you're looking for the 20-year option and another 20-year option on top of that? Is that-
That's correct. The 20-year option, as we all know, is on the table already, and I got to believe that we'll probably mutually agree on that. What we need is the other 20-year from a business standpoint, so that we feel comfortable in making investments, continuing our investment. We want to be part of the Weirs. We always have been. Way back 30 years ago, there was talk of the boat moving out of there. That was the previous owner. But this ownership has never mentioned anything about that. Even when we added, other port to our schedule, we stayed at the Weirs. Weirs has always been our home, a destination, and we would like it to continue so. And I think our commitment has proven that.
Another question?
Sure. Go ahead, Henry.
In terms of the future investments for the additional 20 years, without revealing proprietary information, can you give us any sense of what that might entail without any commitment on your part?
Without any commitment, I would say we'd like to be able to be at the table when things come up for sale or whatever. And I know the owners, my partner in the company is a major player in other properties. So that's all part of wanting to be able to do so, and having that flexibility.
In the lease,
And he has purchased over the years. I mean, for instance, we purchased a property up behind the church that, when the parking lot became available, we purchased it for both our own business sense and also to protect the parking up in that area. So, it's one of the major investments we've made in purchasing properties. So.
is that the way upper lot behind the church? or-
The one right behind the church. We bought it off of the Casanas.
Is
It's
it
right behind the Paradise and the Tower Hill, that
the
parking,
lower one?
the lower one, and we own the 13 spaces right opposite Cozy Cottages up on Maple Street as well.
Okay. So the one that goes way up in the back there, is that still owned by Ames?
That's still owned by Ames.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Let me check. Other than the fact that I also like to say that over and above the commitment in business and investment and all that, I take pride in the fact that we do business with local businesses as much as we can. We also hire local kids and adults throughout our summer. It's just something that has been a family tradition that started with the Heblum family back in the 40s and 50s when they owned it. And it's something that I, knowing Byron as a young kid, wanted to continue that dream of his, to be able to hire kids that are local and give them a job and things like that. So over and above the normal investment, there's the human investment too. I just want to be sure that we have that.
Yeah. Speaking of that family you just said, I have a friend from Massachusetts. He worked at the Boston General Shipyard, and he knew the Heblums.
Yeah.
And he could tell you the whole story backwards and forwards of the mountain, how it got here, what happened with the Irwins, and then the Heblums bought it, and the Dorsey, and how they got named and all that there. He's a historian on it, pretty much.
I'd love to chat with him. It's
he's
very rich in
88,
history, so.
Yeah, we sit down quite often and talk about that and how that all happened, how the smaller boats were work boats in Boston, at Shipyard.
Well, I'm one of those kids. I started in the company at 20,
Yeah.
and it's been my life. And
It's
all I
called the
can tell you
General, I
is,
think, or something like that,
yeah,
you told me.
so
Great.
I can appreciate that.
Yep, yeah, it's always good stories. Okay, so I guess what we're here for, too, is also to review probably some of the lease. We haven't had a chance to do it for 30 years, and if everything goes, what we're going to do tonight will be another 40 years, so I don't have to worry about the next one. but I don't know.
Armin?
But,
Councilor Bowles was looking to do that.
yes, Dave?
David Bounds from Ward 2, just for the record. As you know, we put a substantial amount of commitment into the weirs for water and sewer and underground wires. We're still looking at repairs to the boardwalk and that kind of maintenance. And I don't want an answer in terms of what your level of commitment would be. I just want to know if you'd be willing to sit down with us or the city manager and discuss what our various contributions could be to, I guess my comment is that I think we should be looking to make the Weirs a year-round venue. Now, I know the Mount Washington's limited in December months, but I just want to know if you'd be willing to come to the table to at least have those discussions in a realistic fashion about the possibilities that we have at the Weirs. That's my general question. Thank you. I'll take my answer sitting down.
You know, that's a great question, and seeing how I'm there in the middle of the winter watching the coyotes go down the street while I sit in my office, I would imagine, yes, Ed Gardner, my partner, would more than happy to be part of that conversation and answer any questions. I don't want to answer any questions for him, obviously. I'm a minority owner, but certainly the Weirs has been important, and I'd love to see it to become a year-round. But I also want to point out that over and above the investment, I mean, we do pay our full taxes on the value of the property as well. So, I mean, it's not that we don't pay our share in that regard, so.
Go ahead, Henry.
Just one of the questions I had in and around assignment. I think that for the reasons that you stated and what you'd like it to be, that's what we'd like it to be. I think, the port of call, if you will, being the Weirs. I mean, I guess my only concern about the assignment language as it's currently written, that, if you were to, a subsequent owner, because you can assign this lease to some other party in the future, if we had the building there and no boat, the lease doesn't have the value that it has to us in a reciprocal way today.
Well, just to re-interrupt you here just a second, there is I'm not sure where it is now. There is a clause in here that says if the Mount Washington is to leave, that the leasee is responsible for, and I don't know how they do it, but
Page 4, paragraph 3.
3, yep. The leasee covenants and warrants that in the event the Mount Washington ship is removed from service permanently, that it will replace by the leasee with a vessel of similar size and utility. That's number 3.
So I think, as Councilor Hamel said, there are some requirements that this be their home port, so they can't just use this as a minority stop. They have to use this as their home base to it. They have to operate this ship or an equivalent type of ship. They've got the responsibility to maintain bathroom hours from, I think it's May to November, at certain hours of the day. I believe the train station
6 till midnight.
ticket office is a requirement as part of the offerings. So I believe if a ship did not utilize that docking space as a home base, that would give us a very clear reason to exit the lease at that point.
Yeah. Just to, they are the next 20 years and then additional 20 they're looking for option. It is $1 per year. But down in paragraph C on page 2, it lists what the leasee is to maintain and what they what their responsibilities are. Repairs, the two-story building, stairways, walkways, ramps, decks, ticket office, and that ticket office is also to be used for the train, and they have to keep that open and maintained. Their snack bar, catering facilities, the ticket office, like I said, the Winnipesaukee Railroad, and the restroom facilities that they maintain and pay for those. And those are to be opened from at least 6 a.m. to midnight, from the 1st of May till November 1st. And I know they maintain those very well, so. And then, like he says, they do pay the taxes. It amounts to roughly $15,000 a year for, I think it's 3 properties, or,
I think we looked at the 2 that were down right on Lakeside, and the third one being up on Maple.
right. So they do pay that.
The rest is my concern.
They do maintain an insurance that identifies the city for $1 million, and the city does have that certificate. Okay. Is that done by the year?
We do it annually. It is annual, and
It's annual.
it renews every October.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is on record here?
It is, and we actually conferred with Primex, our commercial carrier, to see if that was a number that they would want us to bump up for this next 20 years, and they were comfortable with the $1 million level, so it was not a professional recommendation to ask that that level be increased.
Okay. There, in the lease is also things that the leaseor is responsible for, and I think it kind of goes with what David was talking about, is the, I guess it's the upper part of the boardwalk is our responsibility. Like retaining walls, the boardwalk, or the upper part. We should be in good shape with the retaining wall since we replaced pretty much all of it. Anyway,
Anything you were looking for to make from a management standpoint?
There was, and I reviewed this with various departments who may have involvement to see if cities, future needs for it, anything that we felt was not being maintained or to the level that we would like to see it, and all the staff saw no immediate or long-term need for the parcel and thought that it was a win-win situation with having the folks at the Mount and the level of professionalism and maintenance they put into it. So from staff, we have nothing.
I think having the Mount Washington there is a huge benefit, not only to the Weirs, but Laconia. They provide a tremendous service, and, the job that they do is fantastic. I've been on it several times, and it's just an outstanding cruise you go out on, and the meals are always good. So I think it's like I said, not only a benefit to the Weirs, but Laconia and the Lakes region because of the different ports it goes to. So I would like to suggest to the committee that we accept this lease for another 20 years. What would we have to do to add that additional on? It have to go through legal?
We would want legal to add it as just being an addendum, or it could be a new lease written, but I think we probably could do it in an addendum. So I think if you were of the mindset to extend the 20 years with the same terms that are in place now, obviously, I think the language says you could change terms if they're agreeable to both parties, but if the intent is just to continue the lease as is for 20 years, I think that can be the first part of the motion, and then, ask me to have legal counsel draft the addendum to add an additional 20 years to the language and bring it back to the council for a formal vote.
So we would bring it to the council as a 20-year lease with legal drafting a amendment to this lease for another 20?
Right, so I think you would recommend that we exercise the option with no changes from the original contract, and then also that we request that the committee is recommending an additional 20-year option, similar to the first one, be placed into this contract.
Okay. So where we would be basically, well, we're going to commit for 20, and then after that 20, it's both parties, as it is here, would have to agree.
Correct.
What I want to be sure is that everybody feels comfortable for basically another 40-year lease.
I would.
David, go ahead.
I don't know if this is the time to ask the question, or I should wait for the general meeting. But my question is, what kind of review have we done in-house or legally of the current terms of the lease? I think you mentioned this is, what, 1987?
It's 30 years since
So
we've
it's
looked at
30
it.
years old. I don't know whether any of the provisions are arcane, or whether we should be looking at changes that everybody can live with. I'm not looking to this yet. And so that's I don't know whether that's an appropriate question for when we get it to council, or should I ask it now?
I think in terms of I have the same thing on my mind, is we could make the recommendation for to exercise the 20-year option, draft an amendment for the additional 20 years as we've discussed, and ask council as they're drafting the amendment, is there any form? It doesn't look like, I'm not an attorney, so but it looks like it's still pretty current in terms of the concerns.
I did have Attorney Mitchell review it, and I probably got it in an email, but I think, to paraphrase him, he thought it was extremely well done for whoever did this 30 years ago. It wasn't him. It would have been nice if it was him, but extremely well done, and he didn't offer up any changes to it. He thought, as the document stands today, it was valid. So we have had legal counsel in-house look at that, obviously protecting the city's interest, and other than negotiating any additional terms that you may have, he thought the appropriate protections were in place, and the language was very clear.
The only thing I noticed in here was there was a lot of talk about, and this probably goes back those 30 years, when all these properties were redone. It says in here about redoing the ticket booth of the boardwalks and things like that. What I'm wondering is, does that need to be in here?
We can maybe modify that language. I think the original language was there was certainly to protect the city, so
Yeah.
that the rebuild occurred within a specific time frame.
Exactly, that's exactly what
Nobody was going to sit
said.
on it as a land bank it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I can certainly speak with legal counsel and see if there's some of those paragraphs that are just not germane anymore that we can strike, and if it's agreeable to both parties, then certainly we can neaten up that portion of the language.
Yeah, probably we ought to do that, since it's already built. I don't know what, probably doesn't need to be in there anymore.
If it isn't broke, don't fix it.
I guess, in terms of just being, we don't feel that there's any material value to be had out of it, rather than spending the legal fee to take out something that's...
I think that's why legal counsel thought an addendum to this would work just as well, because that
Okay.
way it stays with the original body, but you're not having to spend time rewriting something just for the sake of rewriting it.
Okay, yeah.
So can I make a motion, Council?
Did you, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I just wanted to, excuse me, I just wanted to say that as many years as I've been here, and I've been here all my life, Mount Washington's always been something that everybody thinks a lot about, and it does a wonderful job, and I don't think that, we ought to make too many changes. It's been working well, and when you're at other places and you talk about the Mount Washington, people say, oh yeah, we've been there and we've taken that ride, and it's beautiful. So I don't think that we ought to do too many things here. I think these people the document is very well written, and I trust them, and I think that the city is very fortunate to have that at the Weirs.
So we had...
Yeah, the only thing that, to be honest, the only thing that really caught my eye was $1 per year for that property. And I noticed 30 years ago, it was written that $30 be paid up front. in advance.
Looking
I don't think that's a problem.
Small non-sequential bills.
That's a prime,
So we had a draft requested action when we originally had this in front of us that read, I move to approve the lease agreement or addendum between the Winnipesaukee Flagship Corporation, the City of Laconia, to add another 20-year option provision and to authorize the city manager to sign all necessary documents related to the execution of these necessary documents. Is that
That would work.
would work?
Second
okay,
thing.
we have a motion, and it's been seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, there isn't any, so motion
So I'll work
passed.
with legal counsel to get this fast-tracked, and I will let all of you know if it'll be ready for the July 25th meeting. So I just got to check on how busy their schedule is right now, but it would be my hope that we could have it for July 25th, but no later than the first meeting that we have in August.
Okay. And just so you'll know, even though the motion was made here, we have to bring it up at our meeting tonight to go in front of the whole council. So that'll be done either under new business, or I think it's new business, isn't it?
And we had it under, we'll probably do it under unfinished business. I think we had this and we tabled it, or we referred it to this committee, so we'll bring it back under unfinished. And again, my desire would be to have it on the July 25th agenda if we can get the legal counsel language turned around that quickly and give those folks a chance to review it as well.
Okay. It's not under any of the businesses tonight, so it'll come under committee reports for the land and buildings later on in the meeting, and we'll discuss it then. Okay? All right. Is there anything else to come before the board, or the council, I mean,
Adjourn.
committee? All right.
I move with you.
Second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The land and buildings committee will be adjourned at 6:29. Thank you.
Sitting under unfinished. Yeah, so that's going to be a committee report that they'll report out to the full council, but no further action or vote.